When it comes to the NBA, there are only a handful of players who have had the influence to evolve the game. But there's one guy who's reinvented sports figures as we've come to know them. We of course are talking about the GOAT, Michael Jordan. Ever since he was branded Air Jordan, Michael flipped the league on its head, becoming the superstar of all superstars, ushering in a reign of dominance for an entire decade. And with future NBA stars watching him at home, they knew if they wanted to be great, they had to try and be just like Mike. Today, we're talking about ways NBA players copy Michael Jordan. Before we get started, don't forget to help us out by liking and subscribing below and comment what kind of content you want to see next. Without further ado, Air Jordan. Back in the 90s, there was no athlete as nearly as famous as Michael Jordan. I mean, if Michael Jordan decided to leave the NBA and start his own league, it probably would have competed. But nevertheless, his success and accolades made him not only a fan favorite, but a favorite of many of those watching at home who hope to have a career in the NBA one day. While each NBA player eventually comes into their own and plays with their own style, there's no doubt they picked up a certain level of influence from watching players as a kid. And who better to emulate than the guy with 6 NBA championships, 5 MVP awards, 10 All-NBA first-team selections, a Defensive Player of the Year award, and his own shoe brand. While players may have picked up a lot from MJ, it's hard to imagine somebody combining his skill, athleticism, flair, and business savviness into one. But nevertheless, we still love comparing slices of players' games to Jordan's. So with that being said, let's dig into some of the players who took after MJ. Number 1. Russell Westbrook. Even though he's having a down year playing for the poorly performing Wizards, Russell Westbrook has never lacked in energy and determination. Through shooting woes and worries of teammate chemistry, one thing that has never crossed a coach's mind is if Westbrook was going to bring his all on a nightly basis. And this is what reminds us of Jordan. There was simply no quit in either of them. I mean, just look at the playoff semifinals last year when Westbrook and the Rockets were down more than 20 to the Lakers, and Russ was still jawing away at LeBron, yelling that they better double team him. Jordan was famous for his intensity, and after his 10-part documentary came out, some might say he's infamous for it. But whether or not their teammates like it, both Westbrook and Jordan will do just about anything to win. Along with that fight in them, both stars each have another level of athleticism. When thinking about the most athletic guards of all time, most are going to have Russ and MJ in their top 5. Blazing speed, superior strength, and otherworldly hops make it almost impossible to stop either of them when they're going downhill. With the comparisons between the two, what we haven't seen from Russ is the efficiency and poise that MJ brought to the game. And now possibly, in the later half of his career, it's hard to imagine we'll ever see it. Number 2. Kawhi Leonard. If we had to pick one player whose style right now reflected MJ's the most, it might just be Kawhi Leonard. The two superstars have had two very different paths. Jordan was a superstar from the jump, but Kawhi has grinded his way into becoming a star. The two also have incredibly different personalities. Jordan always one to talk and being constantly hounded by the media, and Kawhi being famously quiet and flying under the radar for most of his career. But when you look at the two of them on the court, you can see the similarities in their game, the first of which has to be their defensive pressure. Both Defensive Players of the Year had an unrelenting style of perimeter defense, where it seems like they were always up in your jersey and are always 2 seconds away from stripping the ball if you're not careful. Their style of defense wears you out over a game, even as superstars have to pull out their full bag of tricks if they want a chance. And along with their defense, we've seen Kawhi's offensive game morph into something almost reminiscent of Jordan, at least in the mid-range. During the era of the threes and layups, we don't see a lot of players utilize the mid-range game like we saw in the 90s. Perhaps because of his days with the San Antonio Spurs, we see Kawhi working to become a 3-level scorer. Much like Mike, we see him post up in and around the key, hit the defender with a jab or a little shimmy, and pull the turnaround right in their face. And out of the league's stars, Kawhi is one of the best at this. He doesn't necessarily have the offensive ability to absolutely torch teams like MJ did, but as viewers, we can certainly see the similarities in the mechanics. Number 3. Steph Curry. Okay, this might be a stretch, so bear with us. Let's get one thing straight. As far as their style is concerned, Curry reminds us nothing of MJ. Curry is a below-the-rim, three-point slinger with sometimes questionable defensive abilities, while MJ lived above the rim, rarely shot threes, and locked down players as a one-on-one defender. But what's so similar between MJ and Curry is how they both seemingly changed how the game is played. Back in the 90s, when everyone saw that flair that Jordan brought, they too wanted to make highlights, burn defenders, and throw some crazy dunks down. While he still played tremendous team basketball, isolation ball seems so much more appealing after watching Mike because he stood out as the greatest. And we are all still seeing how the Curry effect has changed the league. Steph Curry almost single-handedly reinvented how we see the three ball. He's made an absolute living off his shooting ability for most of his career, and now we have teams sometimes shooting more three-point shots than two-point shots. What is most appealing of each player's reinventive style is how they are each able to dismantle teams with it, going off in games and entire teams not being able to stop them. So while their styles may not be the same, their impact may be. Number 4. Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler and Jordan have some noticeable similarities in their game. Each has an unrelenting style of defense, where it seems like they're always there, no matter what. Butler has utilized the mid-range game well for himself, and they both attack the basket with purpose, often getting them hit hard and sending them to the line. Yet no matter how hard you hit MJ or Jimmy, they're always coming back to the basket for more. But what really seems similar between the two is the intensity they bring to the basketball when nobody's looking. Both of these men are so committed to working on their skills that they'll alienate teammates who feel they aren't giving it their all. All of Michael's dirty laundry was aired during his documentary, where teammates talked about him physically attacking them and mentally berating them during practices. And Jimmy's famous practice story comes from his time with the Timberwolves, where he took the third stringers and beat the rest of the starters, cussing them out and calling them weak in the process. We're sure MJ was proud. Number 5. LeBron James. While there have been a handful of the next Jordan predictions ever since his playing days, none have been as loud as when LeBron was entering the league. From the time he was 16, all the people have talked about is how LeBron stacks up against MJ. But while LeBron James has definitely lived up to the pressure, their style really isn't all that similar. In fact, if you were going to compare LeBron to any legend, it would probably be Magic Johnson. But what each superstar does share is how they've capitalized on their gigantic level of fame. It's fair to say that Jordan and LeBron have created the biggest brands in sports just with their names. Each have made unprecedented money off their shoe game, Jordan's being one of the biggest in the world, and LeBron signing a lifetime deal with Nike, estimated to be around $1 billion. They're known world-round and each have the poise to deal with the media and all the attention and not let it get to them. In fact, they thrive off it. It just seems fitting that LeBron is taking over the role for the new iteration of Space Jam. Number 6. Kobe Bryant. While the rest of the players on this list are currently in the NBA, it would be wrong not to mention the late, great Kobe Bryant. Kobe's game mirrored MJ's down to the mannerisms. The comparisons between the two of them seemed endless. The post-up game, the shot release, the relentless scoring ability, the determination to get to the rim, the jersey biting. It was all just so reminiscent. Though Kobe was never able to secure that second three-peat, the careers almost even lined up. But what it all started with was a complete and total obsession with the game. It felt like Kobe and MJ more than just loved the game. Basketball was who they were, and MJ saw that in Kobe. He saw that same obsession for the game, and that's probably why he said Kobe was the only one that might be the one to beat him. He then added that it was of course because he copied his game. Out of all the people that MJ inspired, it would seem that Kobe is the closest to being that same type of player his airness was. That's it for today. Who reminds you of Michael Jordan? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. But most importantly, you have an awesome day.